everybody. Welcome back to the Everyday Night. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jeff.
And Jeff, how
Yes,
the
Joe.
hell are you anyway?
Uh, Not bad, they tell me.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Glad to
And
hear.
yourself? You are how are you holding up?
I'm doing well these days. Very busy, busier than I've ever been, I think, but all on stuff I want to do. So it's good.
All right. Well, that's the goal, right? Is
Yeah,
busy with stuff you want to do instead of busy with stuff you have to do.
exactly. So, um, So you had a an observation, a topic, and something that's been discussed lately that you suggested for this evening discussion. Would you like to introduce that?
I would be happy to after we take care of some important business.
Okay,
That being
cheeseburger with fries, please.
wrong business.
Oh, okay.
But you're close. You're on the right track. I think if I let you go as long as I probably should not, come around and come upon it eventually. I'm asking what you're drinking for this evening, sir.
Oh, that. I'm so
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah.
I have a Jack Rose. A Jack
Okay.
Rose is usually
Okay.
associated more like a fall cocktail, but it just sounded appealing today. It is apple brandy, lemon juice, and grenadine,
Huh. Well, it's a
finished
lovely
with
color.
a lemon twist.
Huh.
So, and it's applier. I used the Laird's apple brandy, so it's got an apple or more appler,
Apple year. That's
apply, Appleicious. It tastes more of apple
Appaloosa.
than something like a regular whiskey cocktail that would have essentially a sweet and a citrus with it. So pretty good. How about you? What are you
Uh,
imbibing this evening?
I have been given to me. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it. My beautiful wife found at the local liquor store a pre-mixed cocktail by the Detroit distillery. It is called a honey old fashioned.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
about, it's about 80 proof. I didn't have anything to garnish it with, so I just poured it over ice as they suggested. Um, and I have not tried it yet. I will take my first sip in a public forum and give my unvarnished opinion. How about
Well,
that?
hopefully it doesn't taste like varnish. Tell us what you think.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cheers.
Well, that's quite good, actually. It's lighter and not as sweet as you often get. I only taste a very, very subtle hint of honey.
Hmm.
Um, but it's quite pleasant, actually.
So rather than like the usual sugar cube and bitters, it uses something like a honey syrup or
Apparently, I haven't researched it,
okay.
but it's about seven. The type was very small and the label was a little messed up, but I think it's somewhere between 75 and 80 proof.
Okay. Cool.
So, but no, nice, pretty
Good.
nice.
Yeah, there's been a great proliferation of pre-made cocktails available.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't always care for them.
yeah, neither do I. Maybe they've improved. I haven't tried one in quite a while. I tried one out of curiosity a while ago before the great proliferation of them,
Hmm,
due to changes in law
right,
that
sure.
enabled it. But maybe they've gotten better. I haven't tried any in a while.
Well, I think, like a lot of things, I think the secret to some of these pre-mixed drinks is to not compare them to the actual mixed drink, but decide whether or not it's pleasant enough by itself on its own merits.
Yeah, I did. I have heard advertisements for a essentially the mixology version, the cocktail version of something like a Keurig, where you load up
Oh yeah,
bottles of liquor and then you press the button or mixers and stuff, and it mixes it pours the drink. You still have to shake it and add ice and do stuff. It's like, well, if I'm doing that, it's only saving me the trouble of measuring, and that's not a
Right,
lot of trouble. So I think I
right.
will,
And it means you have to load all these liquors
yeah.
beforehand, and
And
yeah,
the process of mixing something is fun anyway. So
yeah, sure.
yeah.
So,
So
so getting around to our subject,
yes, that you are going to introduce.
I'm going to introduce this because recognizing that most of our audience is members of the Society for Creative Anachronism, this is most relevant to those people. But we're going to talk about some general principles too.
Hmm.
Um, One of the regional divisions of the organization, One Kingdom, the Kingdom of the East, has asked for a variance from the board of directors and been granted the chance to offer a different type of tournament for the selection of the crown.
The
And that
crown
is
being the king and queen or the sovereigns,
the sovereigns, yes,
right?
the co-executive vice chairs of the region.
Vice presidents of the region, technically, aren't
Are they?
they?
I thought that the seneschal was the
Vice
vice
president, vice.
president and that they're vice chairs. But it
I'd
doesn't
I'd
matter.
have to I'd have to look up the equivalent title.
Right.
They are the ceremonial leaders of that geographic division.
Yes.
They have certain authority, certain powers, also responsibilities
Mhm.
in those roles. Um, Typically referred to as game side versus
Right.
corporate side, modern side in the organization. And they
But
have roles, they have responsibilities
it
and
comes with,
authority to do certain things.
sure, and it comes with a great deal of prestige
Yeah.
for a limited time, and then afterwards you are bestowed a title that follows you throughout the rest of your career.
Yes.
That denotes that you've done this service once or twice or however many times. So
And
it's a
I have done it twice, and you've done it 187 times, something like
it's
that.
somewhat less than that,
Yeah.
but often
Often. Yeah.
over 32 years, 8 times.
Okay.
So, uh, and it's a job. It can be a very difficult job if you're not prepared for it. It's very rewarding, and like I said, comes with a certain amount of prestige. So it's in some ways by many it is kind of a coveted position.
Yes.
Um, we in our particular kingdom called the Middle Kingdom, we bestow a great deal of respect in the office because we've by and large had respectable people in that office. I count ourselves among those.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So that has always been decided by a particular form of the original sort of SCA armored combat
The
method.
the martial sport
Yes,
that's competitive, full contact that we engage in. And the
right.
winner of that, um, and the person who they are,
Their consort,
their consort, they're fighting for,
right,
the two of them become the heirs to the throne and serve that for a time and then become the royalty, the sovereigns.
right.
Right.
So that by definition limits the pool of people that can take that office.
Yes.
Someone who can compete and win in that venue.
Yes.
And this has been a source of some unrest amongst the population. I think it's a fairly vocal minority, like a lot of things that happen in the society. Um, but
Well, what percentage of the participants would you say are those who participate in the armored combat sport?
well, I don't know about the participants, the percentage of participants across the entire organization.
Hmm.
I I used to be able to say with some confidence. I'm not sure that's true, but there is no it certainly would constitute a plurality that no other single activity has more participants.
True, but they certainly don't represent a majority of the
No,
people
that's what I
participating.
mean.
Right.
I mean, it's a if it were, say, 25%,
I
which
think I'd be so I think that estimate is high, probably.
perhaps I'm just using it as a number.
Right.
I would say that
I
if it
think
was
it's between 10 and 20% somewhere.
okay, fair enough, but all the other individual activities are a smaller percentage.
True.
So, and it's the remains for good or ill the most central activity that we do. Most successful events are centered around that activity.
Hmm.
To greater or lesser extent. I mean, there are lots of other
Successful as
specialized
in
events.
well attended
Yeah,
and yeah,
monetarily for the group and so on.
yeah.
I mean, certainly there are other specific. Now, the other thing is that when at a tournament, which is what we call these things,
Mhm.
where the heavy combat or armored combat is, there's usually lots of other activities around it.
Yes.
There are also singular activities where there is no armored combat, and those are, I think, can be borne out statistically, usually smaller. They have a much less attendance.
Yeah, there are often more specific a specific set of people who enjoy that activity who go.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Um, so,
So that's
and,
that's the how the the crown, the sovereigns are chosen in that combat sport tournament.
and I think it's worth mentioning that that has it has been done that way in its entire history of this organization. In the
Yes.
50 plus years, that has been the way that sovereigns were selected, and everyone who's joined this organization knew that.
Yes.
So,
Or
so
learned it shortly after joining.
yeah, got educated pretty quick.
Yes.
So, so
The variance.
the variance allows another competitive combat type sport to be used to make that selection,
Yes.
which is we call a rapier.
Yes. So instead of armored participants using rattan weapons, it is people wearing a different sort of armor, cloth armor, other things that are meant to be impervious to a broken blade,
Well,
but they are steel blades.
there's steel
Yes.
blades, yes, blunt steel blades with rubber tips, and
Yes.
um, there's and they wear masks, fencing type masks, and other.
Yes.
I wouldn't call it armor, but protective clothing. Although that,
Protective, yeah, protective gear. Yeah.
yeah, although the nature of that protection is being rolled back as well, and that
Oh,
now you're really only being required to wear the mask, and I think cover the back of your head and your torso is the only thing that. I mean, I've seen people fencing now in a rolled up shirt sleeve, bare arms, no gloves, hose from the knee down, light shoes.
yeah, I would not do that
I
myself.
I probably
Having
wouldn't.
been a modern sport fencer for a while and having seen what a broken blade would do. Now, the blades are different,
Yeah,
but having seen what a broken blade can do, I would not do that.
right.
Um,
I agree.
um, the blades are different. The blades used are not, they're not modern fencing blades, either foil, epee, or saber. They are specifically made for this kind of activity.
And they're also commonly used in uh, HEMA, historic
Mhm.
European martial arts.
Yes,
Um, that sort of weapon,
yes,
and it's a fine sport, a singular skill, and the members of that community practice diligently and all that. And
Mhm.
my take on this, and I'll just throw my attitude out first, is that um, those people that have been are arguing or protesting for a broader pool of participants for Crown Tournament have put this forward as an alternative method. And the East was granted this variance to use that method. But my observation is that they haven't really gotten a greater pool. They've just picked a different pool.
Yeah. Well, the question is whether it was an attempt to broaden broaden the pool or an attempt to give another group an equal chance at this winning this selection process. And it could be either. It, as you said, it's a smaller group of people. It's a different pool,
Right.
but it is a different pool. So you know, so yes, continue, please.
Well, I mean, there are other particular observations I want to make, but that to me, that the if the goal was to broaden the pool, they have not actually. I mean, unless you're saying that because it's if they were to alternate it every year, they might have increased the pool by 40%.
Maybe
Maybe.
the statistics would be interesting if the organization generally, historically, traditionally, repeatedly does a terrible job at gathering statistics
Yeah.
on activities, on all sorts of things. So that's why we're only guesstimating because the based
Yeah.
on experience, but there are no actual numbers
Right.
to know.
There's no
Um,
way for us to go
I mean,
access hard
we could
numbers.
look at the number of authorized participants, the people who are approved to participate in those activities, and
Right.
see that would give us some information. We haven't done that for this. I think the question is always, what's your goal? What are you trying to achieve?
Right.
And if you don't keep that in mind, the solution you pick may be solving a different problem.
Or not solving any particular
And right.
problem.
So if the goal was to increase the pool over time by alternating potentially, maybe so. This would do. If the goal was to give a different group of people an opportunity, okay. If the goal is to experiment with another method or to, try something, see if it works, okay. What is the goal? What is the goal to change the way that those ceremonial leaders are chosen to make it possible for everybody? Well, it doesn't do that. There's still a
No.
physical requirement. And it does beg the question, is a competitive sport the best way to pick leaders for an organization?
Well, I think, and here we can get into this now if you like.
Yeah.
For me, for the purposes of a ceremonial leader, some sort of objective competition is the best way. Pick whatever darts, whatever it is. Anything else is politics.
Certainly, I've heard proposed, and we've talked about this, that over the years, a lot of other methods have been proposed
Right.
for choosing the leaders. And all of them have negatives to them: politics, popularity contest, the perception of a checklist, somebody who has more means to buy their way into it, hiring a champion, doing, I mean, every one of those ways that has ever been suggested, and we've heard a lot of them, has negatives. I think you mentioned, it's like the saying about democracy.
Yeah,
It's
it's the worst. Doing it the way we do it is the worst possible way, except for every other way.
right. And I think one of as you said, there's a lot of prestige that goes with it. It's a lot of work, but there's prestige. You
Mhm.
are the star players in the improvised um,
I look at it
group
as
storytelling that we do.
you're the number one NPC.
Right,
This is the way I look at it. In everybody else's story, you're the
right.
number one NPC.
NPC, right. So I think that's a good way to put it. And the one of the problems that I've seen over the years is with royalty is that they think they have more power than they do. They
Yes,
think that their authority, their power is greater than it is in spheres where it doesn't actually exist. And that's a problem. And if the reason people want to broaden the scope of who can achieve this because they think that there's something other than
that
some prestige,
they can
something
somehow get their hands on the levers.
right.
Yeah,
They're mistaken. So that's one thing. Um, if the goal is to choose a good leader, an effective leader, the a competitive sport is not necessarily the way to do that. You and
right.
I have both seen many times someone who was very good at the sport, who was a really terrible king.
Right. However, I would point out that that has mostly happened since we stopped invitational crown tournaments. That to me was the check.
That was our check.
That was
I
our
think,
check, and yeah, that's true. It is not.
right.
That is a. We were unique
Yes.
in the society for a long time, but it. But I think it served us very well,
Yes.
and
Every kingdom had some sort of control.
well,
Some
only
of them were more effective than others, and and they all had some sort of mechanism by which to potentially weed out problematic people from uh, achieving that position. Some of those methods were not very effective, as we have seen. Um, and
well, and many of them were, in my mind, kind of underhanded.
yes, I agree. I agree.
So what our method of invitational crown tournament allowed you needed to be sponsored into the tournament by someone with experience and who is thought to be responsible
Yes.
in the kingdom, right? So you had somebody had to stand up for you and say, yes, I think they're worthy and they should be put on this list.
Well, and you and I both each had the experience of reigning while there were invitational crown
Yeah,
tournaments, and each of us did not invite people who thought that by their prowess they might have had an opportunity to be invited.
well, the fact is, I only once in all of my reigns did I ever hold anyone. I didn't, and I've never actually held anyone out that applied.
Well, when it was, yeah, when both of my reigns, there was invitational. So if there were people who had been previously invited who I chose not to invite based on recommendations or disrecommendations, I talked to them about it. I talked
Yeah,
to them about the reasons for it because I thought it would be a learning experience, and for most it was. Um,
Well,
Uh,
we've gone through a certain evolution. The one time I made it clear that it would be ill-advised for someone to fight. I didn't actually hold them out, but they were a member of our chivalry, a
mhm,
member of our knights who within our traditions has the right to fight without
yes,
any other sponsorship. I had a conversation with them because I had heard that they were planning to fight, and I told them that for reasons that aren't worth discussing here, it would
right,
be a bad thing for him, it would be a bad thing for his consort, it would be a bad thing for the kingdom if he went ahead and fought for the reasons I believe he was going to fight.
right.
And he agreed and didn't fight. So, but other than that, if someone applied, if someone was recommended to me, I've never not allowed someone to
Yeah,
fight.
I was a bit, well, myself about it, and I made a spreadsheet. It was it was paper, but I made a spreadsheet with names, recommendations, who recommended, who disrecommended. I tallied them. I looked at their letters. I went through a very elaborate process to figure out who. Um, but I'd say so there were controls on it, but there's still been have been royalty who were not great at doing that job.
Yes.
um, I think one of the things about that particular tournament and our sport in general is that, and people who are in the organization will understand this, a very brief explanation for people who aren't. Um, when two people are fighting and one is struck, it's the person who is struck who decides if it was what we call a telling blow, or for shorthand, good. That
Hmm.
is unblocked, unimpeded, with sufficient force. And sufficient force is a matter of training and experience to call what sufficient force is.
Yeah.
Um, so the person who is struck is the one who decides if it was good or not. Now they can get help and guidance and information and insight from the safety officials who are watching, the marshals,
Hmm.
but it's their decision. And the the split second that someone is struck, they have to decide. Sometimes somebody will pause because they're processing what happens, the
Right.
same way you stub your toe and oh, the second this is going to hurt, and then the pain comes. So
Right.
people are processing what happens, but they have to decide good,
Right.
not good. And that crucible, that need to make a decision in that moment, is a test of someone's honor, their veritas, their truthfulness. Do they value honesty more than they value gain?
Yes.
And that's significant. That's important. Um,
And to be fair, that same subjective win or loss model
right.
is used in Rapier.
Yes. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying that that is one often overlooked advantage of that method for choosing the ceremonial leaders.
Well, it certainly goes to the respect of that person if they win,
Yes.
and therefore the prestige that they think they might get out of it. If
Yes.
they don't come to it the right way, they don't get the kind of prestige and respect that they were hoping for.
Yes.
Now,
You can see two people with the same honors, titles, accoutrements walk into a room, and one will be ignored and one will be accorded respect.
yes, and
However, that's among people who know them and know their
sure,
renown or infamy. For people who don't know them, they will get the same level of respect.
and yes, and that's true of any sort of title in any organization.
True.
Um,
Yep.
Now, however, I want to point out, and this is why I think that um, the armored combat model is still the best one, because that respect and that prestige and whatever comes with the win. But in armored combat, the win is mostly, more often than not, accompanied by the spectators, the people watching, can see the sword, see the weapon swing through an arc, stop on an opponent, and make a sound. And if the armor doesn't make a sound, sometimes the opponent makes a sound. But there's often a definitive crack or a jarring movement that comes with a sufficient blow landing.
Yeah.
And the entire crowd, and we've both seen this, where the crowd goes, well, when something like that happens, the crowd will react. The
Yes.
crowd will go, ooh, and you even start applauding. And if the person who got hit doesn't fall down at that moment,
Yes.
that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's usually when marshals step in
Yes.
and there's a discussion that happens. Now, compare that to fencing, to rapier. That sound, I mean, unless somebody is stabbed in the head and their head's rocked back, that's the action in fencing is much harder to follow for the uninitiated. The crowd watching has to wait for somebody to make an overt movement, often has to wait for an overt movement to show who won and who lost.
Well, that's interesting. And since the Olympics are coming up and I watch fencing
It's also hard to
sometimes,
watch.
yes, and it sometimes it's the slow motion that you have to wait for. They are very fast. I also don't like the fact that after every touch, they're both
They're both celebrating no matter
celebrating, right? Like they're trying to persuade themselves into a win. Um, and it's gotten very fast, very athletic. Um, it it's it that sport has changed too, but yeah, I
So,
see what you mean, that it's a lot less obvious to the observers.
and there's another aspect of it too. I think that with the proliferation of other historical European martial arts, or even Olympic fencing, someone with a very good grounding in regular strip fencing has a huge advantage stepping into a rapier list.
Yeah.
Now, I know it won't all translate any more than somebody doing some of the live steel armored combat coming to our sport. They don't have to unlearn a lot of things
Yeah.
before they became really, really good.
No kicking, no throws, no.
You can't punch with your shield. You can't,
Right.
yeah, all that stuff. So yeah, they wouldn't translate exactly, but there'd be a huge advantage.
Yeah.
With the rapier, someone who's involved in the HEMA, the historic
Right.
European martial arts, can train for years in that sport, step into our venue, and be extremely effective.
Yes.
Armored combat with rattan, the way we do it, is unique to our organization.
Yeah. That's yeah.
You can't pick any other thing we do. Archery, some people talk about darts, or you can practice those and you can become a professional in those outside of our organization. Come in and grab that ring.
Yeah.
The only place you can practice SCA armored rattan combat is in the SCA. Well, that's no longer absolutely true either. I guess there are a few splinter groups that use rattan and
Yes.
armor.
Yeah.
Okay, but still, it's medieval recreationists doing all of these things, and it's unique to us, and our rule set is unique. So, to me, that is another good reason why that is the way we have and should select our leaders.
I've actually over the years heard people say, well, this person does this whatever activity professionally, or they're trained in it, or outside the organization. It's unfair for them to come in and compete in an arts contest,
Sure.
fencing, whatever. It's like, well, no, that's improves the organization. So that I've never really understood. But I think you're right that SCA armored rattan combat is a very unique thing. There's certainly people with, and we've seen them who come in with great athletic ability,
Oh, yeah.
and that takes them a certain distance very quickly. But if they don't then gain the technical skill, they will plateau.
Right.
Um, so, well, it's interesting. I mean, are there any other ways to really, if the goal is really to broaden the pool of people who could become the the crown,
Well, there's,
the sovereigns, what could be done other than, let's say, other than uh, well, it could be archery, it could be, but those are competitions. Would it have to be a competition?
well, I've heard it has been put about. There are other armored rattan games out there. Um, one of them, um, I'm not sure, the Empire of Medieval Pursuits. I'm not
Mm,
sure exactly what their selection process is. The we were familiar with another sort of splinter of the SCA called the Kingdom of Acher.
yes.
Their selection process is terrifying to me.
Okay. Is that the one where it's a tournament? It comes down to two people, and then the two people have to gather armies, and the armies fight. The army that wins,
Yes.
that person becomes the king or crown.
Uh,
That's
I'm
what
not
I
sure.
remember.
That's possible. I don't remember that there was a tournament first to select the two sides. I thought that it was all about gathering an army until there were only two armies, until everybody was picked one side or the
Oh,
other.
so that two people fought. The winner now has an army of two. They fight
Well, no, no,
another
no.
army of
No,
two. That becomes an army of four that fights four. That's another way I've heard of it being
that's
done.
we call that a warlord tourney.
Right. I've heard of warlord tournaments that to
And
choose a leader.
and okay, that's a way, and it's as I suppose that would work as well as anything, really. Um, it's at least it'd be hard to watch. I think it would be difficult to discern if things are being played fairly
Yes. I
throughout.
think the first one I described, where a tournament and then each side has to gather their army, but the armies are by choice,
Right.
that would indicate that that person who gathers the larger army or the more effective army perhaps is a more popular leader.
Or is willing to make deals.
Yes. And that's the downside of it.
Yeah. In our organization, the whoever wins that tournament has the absolute final word with no appeal on who gets what awards.
Yes. Yeah.
And if I'm a member of a powerful or at least numerous household, and I want to make sure that all of my people get an award, particular award, I'll fight for you if you guarantee me that.
Yeah. I would hate to see that kind of deal making.
Sure,
The
but it's
same
easy to keep.
problem with like a champion, having a champion fight for you, that all sorts of deal making could happen, including monetary.
Yeah.
Um, I am not opposed to other methods of choosing the sovereigns. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't know what a good one would be.
Well, that's my point is that the one we've got while imperfect, is better than any one that has been proposed to me so far. In my mind, there are the pros and cons are
Well,
way the pros are.
I think that's because, as you said, or as we said, or I said, somebody said, there have been over the 50 plus years the organization has existed, various controls have been developed to, if not create the best leader and put the best leader in position, at least to be more likely to eliminate the worst.
Fair enough. I think
So
there's
if
plenty of people, however, that will just call that another form of gatekeeping.
that's true, but if there are other methods, we're pointing out the drawbacks of those without thinking of what the possible controls could be. And
Well,
those probably would develop over time, and I don't know what they would be. Um, but if those had been the method from the start, there would have been controls that would have developed over the years, or the organization would have gone away.
yeah.
So,
Um, there are a couple of other sort of general objections that I have to changing it in that everybody, you knew what you were getting into when you signed up, right? To me, this is, and it's dismissed as, well, this is the way we've always done it. That's not an argument, but it is kind of. When you joined this organization, you knew what the deal was. This is, and our combat sport is absolutely egalitarian. If you are now, if you're not physically able, okay, that is a limitation. But it is not, to me, it doesn't seem to me right for you to say that your limitation means that we have to change the organization entirely to fit your disability.
yeah, well, I certainly, who would think that I would have become king twice, or
I'm not a fantastic athlete. I just did it more than anybody else.
yeah, yeah, it
I
was
mean,
practice and diligence and
you keep
um,
at it.
yeah,
And our rule set allows, um, is not restricted to, white guys in their 30s. There's women, there's people of color. There's absolutely no restriction as to who can come and compete.
yes,
The idea of we need more diversity, we're absolutely diverse. We're
yeah.
absolutely open.
Well, diverse is a term that is often applied and often not very well defined. But yes, the the fighting community is more diverse than a lot of others. It's true. Um, there, the organization has evolved. It will
Yes,
continue to evolve.
absolutely.
It is, I have seen those people over the years who said, no, it shouldn't change. And it just, they get run over.
Yeah,
The organization will change, but without their guidance. So we can guide the organization's evolution with our input and with our observations and with our experience, or we can say no, and it will change anyway. There's William F. Buckley Jr., the noted conservative writer and commentator, was once asked what conservatism is. And he wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, I remember some of it, but not all of it verbatim. He said, "We stand athwart history, saying, no more. This shall not change. This is the way it is and should be." And yeah, things changed all the while he was objecting, things changed. And
Sure.
things will change. And the organization, every organization changes and evolves. And it does so either with the guidance of its experienced people or without.
Or
So,
in spite of.
in spite of, yes. So, again, I come back to the first thing I said. What's the goal? What is the goal? If the goal is to give absolutely everybody in the organization an opportunity, every member, every paid member of the organization, an opportunity, although some would object to that, um, a chance at being the sovereigns, well, that goal, this is not going to achieve that goal. If
But
the go but
my
is that
point,
the goal? Is that I don't know what the goal is other
my,
than we this is the thing we do, and we think it's another broadening of the opportunity.
well, there's broadening and there's diluting for me. Now, uh, and everybody can have a chance. Everybody has a chance,
Yeah.
but no,
I
nobody
remember you
has an
saying
equal
once,
chance to everybody else.
I remember you saying once, and I heard it too, people say about tournaments and not just crown tournaments, but all other tournaments. Well, the knights shouldn't enter they should give other people a chance. And I remember you saying they have a chance. They can come and try to beat me,
Right. They have the
defeat me.
same
If they can
chance
do,
I.
yeah,
If I've spent more time, developed more skill, worked harder, that's right. Now that sounds like the pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of argument, but we're not saying I'm not saying you
except we're
can't.
not doing that. We teach people.
Yes,
We teach people.
exactly.
We grab if they don't have bootstraps, we give them bootstraps,
Yeah, right.
and then
We'll
we
help you
help.
make them.
We make them and we pull them up and say, come. Here's the thing I'm doing that works against you. Here, let me show you how to do it.
Yeah.
And I remember in my first crown tournament, um, I was in the finals with Sir Elistron,
I recall.
who's a foot taller than I am. And in the weeks leading up to it, we were practicing together and we were showing each other techniques, things we
Yeah.
did, and then we met in the finals.
Right. Right.
That's the kind of activity it is.
And it is, yes, in all of my years, it is. Now, again, I have a sort of Middle Kingdom centric view
Yeah.
of all of this, right? But in all of my years, the armored combat community has been absolutely welcoming. You want to
Yeah.
do this thing? Come here. We'll show you how. We'll loan you stuff. We'll give you whatever training you want, as much as you can handle, as often as you like. There's and
The
we
Rapier
don't care.
community is like that too.
Great, great. And I would expect that the SCA as a whole
Yes, is
is
like
like
that.
that with any activity. Come on,
Yeah.
you want to do this thing? You want to learn how to sew or cook or brew or whatever?
So we are not telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We're
No,
quite the opposite.
no. But saying that anybody can do it because I did it is often looked down
Yes.
on. Well, except that if that means I had to work a little less hard because I'm a male, okay, maybe. But this is the sport we picked. I mean, if you're a woman, if you don't have the upper body strength, you need to work on your technique more, you need to spend a little more time training. Okay. But you'll get all the help you need in that period.
Everybody has limitations.
Everybody has limitations. I'm not 6'6".
Yeah.
I gotta fight a guy I fight guys who are a foot taller than me too.
Yeah.
I'm not an amazing physical specimen. I didn't come to this organization with great gifts. I'm
Well,
average by just about every metric.
what was it you told somebody about me that I came out of college with absolutely zero athletic.
I borrowed a line from Rudy without a single speck of athletic ability. And You knew it and you worked hard and you got good.
Yeah.
You know, there's no substitute for that. And there's no way to make that equal. There's no way to make everyone who comes into the organization equal so that they all have an equal chance.
And yeah, which does remind me of Vonnegut, um, the handicapper general,
Oh, yeah.
if you're familiar with that
Yeah.
story. Um, one thing that either or both the rattan armored combat and rapier do is they require a lot of dedication to
Yes.
get to the point where you are skilled enough to win
Oh, yeah.
that tournament. So so I just say in I while I agree with your observations about what the organization has done and how it has worked, um, I don't I don't necessarily have an objection to some other method of choosing the sovereigns. I just don't know what it is.
No,
I
and
just
I wouldn't.
haven't seen it. I wouldn't want
That's
to
fair.
have, for example, every member. So you're a member twice a year. Everybody's membership number goes in a drum, and it's like the lottery. The balls automatically drop out and say, "Okay, these people are the
Yeah.
co-sovereigns for the next 6 months." You know,
Right.
I wouldn't want to do that either. So, but that
No,
would be
fair.
random, fair, random chance, but fair
Yeah.
is not necessarily equitable. So,
Right. And it doesn't yield any necessarily anything positive.
right.
It's just fair. I mean, so, and another aspect of this that has, it's not just about crown tournaments, but I see it in other aspects of the organization now. And I go back to remember saying that this is what it was when you walked in. This was presented to you as this is how this organization works. Welcome. And if you want to do our thing with us, we will help you. We will loan you stuff. We will give you whatever support you need to achieve the things you want in this organization. But the work is up to you. But this is the organization as it is. You can join or not join. There are other organizations, plenty of things to do in the whole world. This is the organization you've joined. This is, to me, in a lot of ways, this is like joining a rock climbing group and saying, yeah, but I want to go scuba diving.
Except, and that's a valid point. However, I will point out that when the organization began, women were not allowed to compete.
Certainly. Yes.
And when the organization began, they were using fencing helmets and shaved
Before it was an
two by
author,
fours.
before it was an actual organization,
They
they were
say
doing
yes.
that.
So, um, so it has changed in ways.
Sure.
I think the biggest analogy or the biggest example of that in some ways is rapier combat itself. Because, and I remember the debates about it, and I asked the question, is this there is no example of a tournament in this exactly. It was a civilian form of being armed,
Right.
and so it was essentially a street fight, you know. So there probably would have been schools where there were competitions within the
Yes.
schools, and maybe it's analogous to that, but fencing of this sort did not exist in the organization for a very long time. So
Correct.
maybe that's one example of it changing. But then there was no equestrian, and now there is, and I mean, that's also a very small
Yeah, and even
number of
smaller.
participants. Very
Hmm.
small because in the modern world, it's difficult to own horses and practice with them.
Right. Yeah.
Extremely difficult to do. Expensive and so what if it was a horse mounted an equestrian competition for crown? That would really narrow the pool,
Yep.
but it might get more people to do that activity.
Well, but not everybody can afford that activity, whether they want to do it or not.
Right, right,
So
exactly. There'd
it's
have to be, but there's loaner armor. I guess
there aren't loaner horses for jousting.
no. Um,
The training with a horse is 90% of horsemanship.
yeah,
So I, I get your point.
yeah.
Um, and but again, it comes back to me, the sport that we do is unique to this organization. This organization invented it, evolved it, developed the rules, developed the equipment. It is its thing. It
To the
belongs.
point where the rules are emulated by other organizations,
Yes.
by other groups with modifications, but they really are emulated by other groups.
The SCA was the first kid on the block
Yeah,
with this kind of reenactment stuff.
yeah.
Every other rattan using organization has SCA members have split off and started it and made rules and made changes that things that dissatisfied them about the SCA. They made all of those rule changes and started their own
Yeah,
organization.
I'm not. Now as far as LARP LARPers go, I don't know that that isn't at least in some to some degree also inspired by or the
I
SCA in
think,
some because I don't know when that started.
well, that I think comes
Other than
more.
that, I used to do that as a kid, just with like we all did with sticks
Oh, yeah.
and stuff.
But I think
So
that your live action role playing games now evolve out of tabletop role playing games
yeah,
more. The original LARPs that I've seen old photos of, I mean, they're throwing Silooms and saying magic missile. It's
okay.
magic and monsters and spells and and they have classes. You know,
Well,
there's other.
we should do that.
We should, except uh, we hit too hard for
No,
my.
no, I mean bring spells and missiles and all that into the
We
SCA
were
group.
the SCA is expressly magic is expressly prohibited.
Yeah, they may. I don't know if they kept that rule, but it certainly was at one point. Although a rumor got back to me many years after it was circulating that my success in the sport was due to my secret use of Jewish magic.
Oh, the Kabbalah.
Whatever it was, I found it really offensive because it was like saying, "Oh, I could never do that. You're so talented." That also, both of those statements completely dismiss the work involved
Yeah.
and
Yes.
say, "Oh, it's something you were born doing and you can do. Therefore, it's it's
Well, and not to mention
it's
more,
ignoring the work."
and not to mention more than vaguely anti-Semitic. So
Oh,
you're
yeah,
seeing
yeah,
Jewish magic.
explicitly, not vaguely. So, yeah.
Right. So I haven't yet heard, and I admit to a bias. I mean, I have not heard an argument yet that has, like you say though. I mean, I'm willing to entertain a better system, a
Yeah.
better system, not just a different system. I'm willing to entertain a better system. Come up with it.
Yeah. And I'm exactly. I'll be interested in seeing the results of this experiment that they're doing, this variance, and what happens. And
Well, and this, my other, I'm gonna call it an objection, but one observation, and lots of people have been observing this too, that well, it's just people say, well, it's just a one-off, it's just an experiment, it's just we're just experimenting with it. The SCA has never not adopted something that it experimented with a
yeah,
couple of very small exceptions,
yeah,
and mostly they have to do with armored combat and being safety issues.
you're right.
So the East got it once, they'll ask for it again. I mean, assuming it works out. I can't imagine. I think that it'll be under such scrutiny that it has to go smoothly this first time.
Yeah, I think the question will be, does it have a large enough group of participants to imbue the tournament with the dignity and importance that it deserves? I'm paraphrasing there, but that's something from the organizational rules.
Oh, as a like when it's we're speaking to a peerage, you
No,
mean?
when it's a crown tournament that is under a certain number of participants
Oh,
is at risk of not being valid because there weren't enough participants.
huh. Gee, that's that. I wonder what that number is. Apparently it's four.
Well, it is undefined, and I don't think that rule has been applied, if it still exists, um,
Well,
in many, many years. So
it happened. Well, it happened here.
4,
We had a king
yeah.
who
Oh, yeah, yeah.
everyone but four, and the board had to
Step in
intervene,
and say, yeah, yeah,
and it got expanded to 11.
yeah,
So maybe 11 is the number that imbues it with this. We've had, I mean, there have been crown tournaments in other kingdoms that had 9,
yeah.
and
But it's considering the size of the population of the kingdom, though. But
well, our
yeah,
crowns, still have the largest population, and our crown tournaments have dropped to low 20s
yeah,
fairly consistently.
yeah.
I think that's partly because we've scared people away from it
Yes.
by
Well, I do recall somebody saying, the people who win crowns shouldn't do such a good job because it intimidates other people from giving it a try. Like,
that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
no, you want people to aspire to doing something well.
Yes.
You people you shouldn't wear such good, nice clothing, nice armor. It then people who starting out just get intimidated. No, we'll help them do the same thing,
Right. Yeah.
right?
And royalty gets a lot of help offered.
Yes.
Whether they have the humility to take it
Yeah.
is another question. But yeah, it's can be difficult. It's a job. It's something you've never done. You've never done anything like it before. Lean on the people that have.
Yeah.
But a certain amount of pride can be the downfall
Yeah.
of royalty. So
Yes. Well, a lot of things. Well, I think we've discussed this. I don't think we have to reach a particular conclusion. Uh,
no, we can await the results of the
yeah.
East experiment and go from there.
Yeah.
But I
So
think with the amount of discussion that's being had, I thought that you and I could have a pretty
yeah,
pointed discussion about it.
yeah, yeah.
So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for suggesting this. And
And
thank you, everybody, for listening. Please like and share and subscribe and comment and suggest topics for us and tell us, what the airspeed velocity of an unladen albatross is. You thought I was going to say something else. So,
I didn't think anything of the sort.
okay. And so until we see you next time, be thou
A good night.
and true.